So Israel is being accused of quote unquote pure freaking evil. Watch this podcast where American stand-up comedian Dave Smith decides to condemn Israel and throw her under the bus on the Piers Morgan show before this Israeli British lawyer, and watch him get educated. This is pretty good.
It's disqualifying to this conversation. You're playing a different game than me and Piers are. We are having a conversation about what's actually going on. You're a lawyer who's not allowed to incriminate your client, which is Israel, because you know the answer the same way Piers knows it, the same way I know it. Do they have nukes?
Let me be perfectly clear. I am not in the employ of anyone associated.
What's the name of your organisation?
UK Lawyers for Israel began as a voluntary association of lawyers looking for the proper application of law to Israel, Israelis, and combating anti-Semitism. It is truly remarkable. We are having a different conversation. This is a circus, and I'm actually seeking to address practical questions, including the disgusting situation that we are now left with, where the international community has said that Palestinian civilians must uniquely be kept in a war zone, may not be permitted to leave. That is what I'm hearing being advocated for consistently, so that they can be continued to be used not just as human shields by Hamas, but as human sacrifices, dragging this conflict out. The tragedy of this misinformation and this propaganda is not just that Jews are being gunned down and burned in the street. It is also that Palestinian civilians are continuing to suffer as a result of this war, but also of Hamas suppression, repression, torture, and the stealing of aid, which has been well documented. The fact that people like the two of you will continue to put out this false information, to perpetuate this conflict, to perpetuate Palestinian suffering is truly disgusting. What have I said that's false?
I didn't think anyone could be more disingenuous than the UK ambassador. I got to say, Natasha, you've got right up there. You've crossed that little bar, haven't you?
If you can indicate one aspect of what I have said that is incorrect, we will have this conversation. But so far, you are throwing out appallingly misconceived allegations, which are baseless.
Do you know what?
Piers,
Israel,
notice she couldn't answer the question.
I had Jonathan
about whether Israel
Conricus
has
on, who was a
nukes.
former IDF guy, obviously, and even he was able to admit a lot of what Israel is now doing is wrong. And it just shouldn't be happening the way that it's happening. When you blindly don't... I mean, I think that Hamas are blindly, ideologically to one side of this. They're a bunch of genocidal maniacs. I think people like Smodrich are genocidal maniacs. And I think anyone on the pro-Israel side, particularly a lawyer who can listen to what Smodrich said last week and not understand that he is actually promoting war crimes out of his very mouth.
We haven't discussed Smotrich, and I'm not particularly interested in what he has to say because it's...
Well, he's the finance minister of the Israeli government. He's one of the three most powerful people in the country.
He clearly doesn't have an input to the war cabinet's policy
or how this
campaign has been run.
Even you don't believe that as you say it.
Well, I wouldn't be saying it if I didn't believe it.
You don't think that Smodrich has much influence over the Israeli government?
Not on the conduct.
He's done anything about the Israeli government?
Not on the conduct of this war,
It's like saying
Goebbels
didn't have any control over policy. Therefore, it doesn't matter what he said.
I didn't interrupt Mr. Smith. The fact of the matter is that the proof of the pudding is in the eating. Everything that the Israeli army, the Air Force, and the Military Advocate General Corps, which is actually unique, in the manner in which it approves strikes and the military tactics that the IDF launch. In fact, when I was on the ground in Gaza, including with a very senior military official from the UK, Sir John McCall, all of the group remarked that the procedures that Israel had put in place were unprecedented, that it wasn't just adhering to international humanitarian law, the law of armed conflict, but in every respect was going far above the requirements, including in taking precautions to prevent civilian casualties.
How have they been so careful? Have they managed to destroy 70% of Gaza and killed, I think it's 50 to 60,000 people?
Well, those again are Hamas figures, which
What's the figure,
not accurate.
What's the figure?
Well, you heard, I think, from the ambassador, 30,000.
How many people have you killed?
30,000. There you go with you again. I think there's been some misbriefing in this.
Well, you seem to be speaking on behalf of the government.
No, I'm speaking on behalf of the facts and the proper application of law, which I appreciate neither of you seem to be particularly interested in. But I will maintain my interest, in particular, the fact that these casualty figures by Hamas do not take account of how these people are said to have died. We know Hamas are shooting their own civilians. That false report of Palestinian civilians at aid centres being targeted by Israel, that was in fact Hamas shooting them.
You don't know that.
We have the drone footage.
You don't know that.
And we have
You actually don't know who killed them.
We have consistent accounts.
The investigation is still going on, but of course it's an Israeli investigation, which will doubtless exonerate the Israeli forces.
We also know that Palestinian civilians are killed by indiscriminate missiles. Palestinian Islamic Jihad and Hamas rockets, when they fall short in the Gaza Strip, they don't fall with a proportionality analysis. They don't fall precisely in the way that Israeli strikes are conducted with warnings before.
If you're doing everything so magnificently by the book, why is it that so many allies of Israel are now queuing up, and former prime ministers of Israel are queuing up to condemn it? Are they all utterly deluded?
No, there are two particular reasons for this. The first is what we have seen with the manufacturing of this disinformation that comes out of Gaza from Hamas, that is promoted by NGOs formerly respected like Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, that is then in turn reported by UN special rapporteurs, that finds its way into Security Council resolutions or General Assembly resolutions, that then in turn makes it up to institutions like the ICC and the ICJ. And then once that circle of disinformation is complete, these matters are often re-reported by the NGOs that started this disinformation cycle in the first place. That's reason number one. Reason number two is because of the mode in which the international media have conducted their reporting of this conflict. We have the Al-Ali Hospital as a prime example on the 17th of October 2023. Immediately it was reported that this was an Israeli airstrike. That was false, Piers. Just like the reports of Israel targeting Palestinian civilians trying to get aid were false. I urge you to use a little bit of logic here to assess what on earth Israel's objective could be, targeting civilians or hitting hospitals like this willy-nilly, which it does not do without good reason, because Hamas has used them as command and control centers, and when it provides warnings to enable civilians to evacuate. Why on earth would Israel be targeting Palestinian civilians when it has been seeking from the get-go to evacuate them, to provide humanitarian corridors, which it has defended, even though Hamas has fired onto these civilians as they seek to flee areas where Hamas has embedded its terror infrastructure in these civilian areas, in mosques, schools, hospitals, and every second house when I was in Rafah.
A brilliant response by British lawyer Natasha Hausdorff. It's so fascinating to watch this debate where the two men are entirely emotional. There's no facts. She asks them for the facts, and they just respond with feelings. Whereas she responds with one fact after another fact after another fact. You can actually see it in their demeanor, where they're getting all heated up and excited, all emotional, but she speaks with an even keel. This is one of the trademarks of anti-Semitism, is to ignore the facts and try rather to attack with innuendo and association. When the facts aren't working in your favor, then try to attack the person behind the facts. And that's what seems to be going. Got to give these guys a little bit of respect for having been able to remain quiet for the last few minutes of the discussion and actually allowing an opportunity to Natasha to state her case. But this is nothing short of an international blood libel. Dave Smith from America, Piers Morgan from England. Piers Morgan, he should know about genocide. He should know about persecution. After all, the British expelled every single Jew from the United Kingdom for 300 years, starting in the 14th century. It was only Oliver Cromwell in the 16th, maybe 17th century, who allowed the Jews to return back to England. The British should know a thing or two about ethnic cleansing, whereas the Jewish people are the ones who actually are the only country in the Middle East that allows a faith other than their own. There are no shuls in Lebanon or in Syria or in Iraq, but there are mosques all over Israel. Israel is a democracy. Israel is a place where, contrary to the frustration of the anti-Semites, Arabs actually do get to vote in Israel. They vote like equal citizens. There's Arab judges on the Supreme Court. There are Arab generals in the IDF. There are Arab soldiers on every rank of the Israeli army. Israel is truly a democracy. Yet they're trying as hard as they can to paint Israel as xenophobic, as racist, as hateful as Nazis. But one thing that they won't be able to overcome is the facts. Strength to you, Natasha, for standing strong, maintaining an even keel, not being intimidated by this blood libel, by this rabble-rousing crowd that's trying to senselessly rewrite the facts. But as Jews, we need to know that just like the darkness dissipates in the face of light, evil dissipates in the face of good, and falsehood dissipates in the face of truth. We have to stay strong to the truth, strong, connected to our values as Jews, connected to the Father in heaven, to Hashem, connected to the Torah, and connected to the mitzvahs. And as we do that, like every enemy that has attacked us throughout history has disappeared into the dustbins of history, so too the haters who try so desperately to tear us down will also be relegated into the dark dungeons and the dustbins of history. Am Yisrael Chai.